everybody, and welcome to the Are You Screening podcast. I'm your host, RUScreening.com's own Mark Eastman, and with me, as always, is co-host extraordinaire Shane Leonard.
Hello.
And this week, we actually have kind of a big week. Hopefully 3 movies. But also, so what we're hoping to cover is Brutalist, A Real Pain, and Gladiator 2. And before we even get into that, which we don't have time to mess around with news and all that other stuff, but I just want to throw out real quick, and this will be weird for people watching it or listening to it or whatever, because it won't exactly make a lot of sense because it will be backwards in time for you or whatever. But we have finally gotten, we had some real strange technical and health issues going on. So we're finally going to like repost or do whatever to make sure all the episodes that we've had like for the last 5 months finally go. But I don't want to do them any more than like one a day.
Right.
I don't want to just like dump them all.
Somebody's feed, like me, even though we're on the show, like I subscribe to the show.
Right.
All of a sudden, like 45 episodes kick in. Not only is the space on my phone dwindling, but I'm like, well,
you're like,
I'm deleting this. I'm not doing that if these guys are going to do that to me.
Right. So
Yeah.
So it'll probably be like one a day, just to
It'll be like Christmas
just
for
to
the rest of the month.
just to not be insane.
Right. But they're coming.
But so we will have all those, and I do have to just say before long, and I don't know right now exactly when it'll be because I haven't figured that out. But we've got to finally get to like best ofs and worst ofs and our awards and all that, and the Critics' Choice, even after getting delayed. You know, and the Oscars and all that stuff. So
Fires.
We got to be in there somewhere with our best of the year. And I don't know about you, but for me, it is a really weird year. And I say that like every year. Last year was very weird because my list was so easy to make, and I didn't have a whole lot of extra things that I had to whittle it down to.
Yep.
And this year is weird because there are a lot of movies that I am trying to convince myself to be on the list.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm in like a really weird place of going, you know, screw it, that could be on my list.
Right.
Because there are like these, there are a bunch of movies that are only like actually 7 or 8 maybe or something. But
right.
like I love them. and I want them to be in something. And there are so many, the industry itself has made this year weird.
Yeah.
Because there are so many movies that took up so much money.
Yeah.
And then were total garbage.
Just bombs.
That there is like this kind of void.
Right.
Of like general.
Yeah.
I don't know, like there should be more movies.
There should be more placeholders.
But there are, you know, there's there's at least 3 or 4 movies.
Yeah.
That are like Megalopolis, which will forever be like every year now. There will be like, this is this year's Megalopolis.
That one.
Which is a crazy thing to say.
Yeah.
But Megalopolis is coming out, and there's all these other movies that are like, well, we're not going to come out, you know, that weekend or plus or minus a couple of weekends.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe we'll just push this to next year or, you know, whatever. But there were so many of these movies that people were like, I don't want to compete with the Megalopolis and all those stars and whoever directed this or that or whatever the movie, you know, because a year ago when you were figuring out when you were going to release or whatever, you're like, I don't want to be next to that because that will be this giant badass thing. And even, you know, some things that would be like award contender things, you're like, maybe I don't want to come out that year when all these movies are going to obviously win everything. And then they turn out garbage.
Right.
And then how are you supposed to make your list? You've got all these holes where there should be a bunch of other movies. Anyway, so it's a very weird year for me putting together the best. And the worst is like just absolutely spoiled for choice. I could make like 30
I was
movies
going to
worse
say
than
20, 30. Let it rip.
It's crazy.
It's every year we say it because every year it is an odd year for different reasons. It's not always the same reason, but it's the same thing because it feels strange. This year's really weird. I've been very spoiled in being able to see tons of films in the Oscar season. And this year I saw one. My list, even cataloging like how many films I see a year for the last since we've been doing the show, is much, much higher than the average person's. Not quite near yours because you have to see everything and you take the responsibility seriously, so you see everything. My list is probably, I won't say halved, but it's probably missing easily 35% of what I normally would have seen. So my list, when I started looking at it a couple weeks ago, and I went, "What did I forget to write a bunch of stuff down?
Right.
Is this all I've seen?" My list is going to be, in some years, I don't remember which year. I remember one year it felt like top film was like a 9 or a 10 on my list. And then 2 through 6 were all 7s and 8s. And then like 8 and 9 were a 9. It was just like the year of like great middle ground film. And I was like, all right, that happens sometimes. But this year for me is going to be really weird because I just don't have the catalog for it.
Right.
It's really weird. Like I'm
Yeah.
gonna say like Paul Blart, Mall Cop, and you're
And-
gonna be like, what?
And there
Like I had to
are
see something.
there are so many movies that if you're not a person who has to see everything,
Right.
there are so many movies where you go, well, I'm gonna, spend my time on this movie because that's supposed to be really good. And then no, it's not. It's awful.
Right.
And then you're like, well, okay, now I have to go see like 10 more movies to try and find a movie that
Right.
will be good. I don't know.
Right.
It's just completely insane. Also, before we jump completely in, I did want to just throw out for people who have not listened to us forever. I feel like every once in a while we should say something to
Yeah.
anyone who's new, but just so that this is like kind of on the on the record
Yeah.
or whatever of saying things. If you haven't listened to us forever, and if you have listened to us forever, then you're awesome and thank you.
you.
But if you haven't listened to us forever, it should just be noted if you're like tuning into this, right? When we started doing this, it was called Instant Reaction Review, and it was literally we would go see a movie and like boom, like within like a half hour, we would go. So the theory behind the show still is we don't work out like giant scripts. When I write a review, that's like a whole other process, right?
Right.
And this is just, really off the cuff, really just whatever. And we don't, behind the scenes, like talk out movies and
Remember,
make
minute
sure we
11,
say
kick it
all
to
the
me so I can
things
bring
that we
this
wanna
thing up about
say.
Spielberg. And
Right.
we don't
have
do
like
that.
a whole bullet list of all the
No.
points, and half the time the show ends and we go, oh, I was gonna say
Next
whatever.
week, yeah.
It's
We're not
just,
scripted.
The whole idea is just to be, very
Conversational.
real,
Yeah.
and like conversational, and like
Yeah.
the conversation you would have walking out of the theater or something,
Driving home.
like that,
Going
right?
to get, yeah. Right.
So,
yeah, that's true.
whatever. Just so you know,
That needs to be said sometimes.
because a lot of movie review podcasts,
Right.
and whatever, are
Very scripted.
not that way,
Yeah.
right? Like
Right.
you're trying to make like a lot of them are like 8 minutes long or 15 minutes long, or just like boom, here's our rating, go see this, or
They read their typed review,
right,
or they give an abbreviation of it. Yeah, truly, we just sit and look at each other and be like, "Did you like that? Why? Really? Huh?" So that's the informal hook. Anyway.
yeah. All right, so that out of the way, I just feel like
that's good.
New people show up.
Yeah.
You should have some idea what you're getting into.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Brutalist, A Real Pain, and Gladiator 2, and this is a odd combination of movies actually to throw all together. I was having a conversation actually about the Brutalist with somebody, and really I came to the conclusion that it is just the bane of being a movie critic. Kind of movie that is, you do not want to be a movie critic. Whether you like it or don't like it, doesn't
Right.
matter. It's like there is nothing to say to get someone to this movie or to even really give people without writing like a 500
Yeah.
page
Right.
essay or something. There's nothing you can say. So it's horrible. So anyway, we're not going to start with that though. But A Real Pain and Gladiator 2 are like a little, older. We'll run back to those and then catch up. So basically, I think Gladiator 2 to start because I hated it. And so now that you know,
That's easy to do.
so and I don't feel like we need to really explain much of what's going on.
We
Right?
can explain why you
Gla-
hated it.
it's Gladiator 2.
Yeah.
And it is, I don't know, the next generation of Gladiator dude. Rome is being led by a pair of like sane brother
Brothers.
tyrants,
Right.
who
Right.
are
Absolute
just
psychopaths.
just absolutely crazy people. And Denzel Washington is a like hopeful of the constructor of machinations and
Yeah.
wants to I don't know, take over and whatever. It's kind of a goofy theory of what happens in this thing, but especially where he's concerned. But actually, everything's pretty in the movie. And it's really just like we get this giant battle at the beginning. We get an excuse to get our gladiator to Rome,
Yeah.
and then lo and behold, secrets and whatever, and hilarity ensues, and not actually all that much action ensues, which is crazy.
Strange for a film that is supposed to be really ripping off its predecessor.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, the basic idea of the movie. I really struggled with this movie because I didn't hate the first one. I liked the first one pretty well. I didn't like it as much as everyone else. But it was pretty good. And this one, I was like, I actually watched this movie, and I don't do this,
Yeah.
right? But I got to about halfway through this movie, and I was like, maybe I'm missing something. Right? Am I crazy?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Anyway, but I ended up giving it 2.5, and that was
almost
that was as good as that was gonna get.
Yeah.
And I thought, there's this, there's that. There are some decent parts in it,
Yeah.
but for the most part, this is just exactly the Gladiator 2 that I would expect Ridley Scott the last 6 or 7 years to make.
Yeah.
And which means it's insane, self-aggrandizing, grandiose crap that you go all through this movie, and like I think I said this to you on the way out, like he thinks he's writing Shakespeare.
Yeah.
And you can sit through some of the scenes in this movie, and I wish I could say, like we often say, if you just watched all the separate scenes,
Yeah.
and
If you didn't watch this
you
movie,
would think it was great. Right?
Yeah.
But that is not true here. There are a few that are pretty good.
Yeah.
There are some moments where we kind of break away from the plot a little bit to just kind of like have like a certain moment.
Yeah.
Some of those are pretty good.
Yeah.
Most everything that has to do with the plot is like crazier than the Emperor's.
Yeah.
It's all like such nutty hogwash. I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah.
But what I was gonna say is there are scenes where you can just see like Ridley Scott thinking, like, I'm so much better than Shakespeare right here, and these lines are going to turn into like, phrases that people use all the time, like quoting Shakespeare
Are you not entertained?
and stuff like this. Like, it's so weird to watch.
Yeah.
And it's weird to watch not only as the sequel to Gladiator,
Right.
but just as like the next thing that Ridley Scott did from, like the last 3 or 4 movies
He's done.
Like,
Right.
he is like on some weird downward spiral. 3 movies from now, he's just going to sit in front of the camera and talk and think that everyone's going to start a religion around him or something. Like,
Right.
it is so weird watching this. But there are some good things. Most everything is hard to sit through.
Yeah.
And fairly boring. And for something that is a Gladiator movie, that should be action. And I'll tell you, even it starts off, and I said this to you on the way out too, I think. It starts off with these weird, as soon as you see these weird fake monkey creatures,
Yeah, right. These hyper baboon things.
you're like, all right, that's what we're
right. Here we
doing.
go.
And it is like, it was so bonkers. It was like nobody in our theater that I remember
Yeah.
like laughed.
Right.
Like they did when it was like Megalopolis
Right.
ended, and everyone just got up and like started laughing.
Well,
and
we
we're
went
like,
through that.
How
Yeah.
was that?
Right. Yeah.
But I feel like they were about to in a lot of parts, right?
Yeah.
That you could just, there was like this vibe.
Yeah.
People were like going, what is going on? There were parts where you'd go like a half an hour, and there would be like nothing remotely actiony, and like people are like going, is this what
This is it. This is the follow up to the Oscar winner for the best picture of the year.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, so I gave it 2.5.
There's nothing I disagree with. There's really not much else. It's you go to a film and it's bad. Usually it's why am I watching it, or can we just have a lot of dumb fun with how bad it is? This isn't that bad, and it's nowhere near good.
I wish it was.
Yeah, like it would actually be sort of funny if it went like harder into just Airplane. Like
Right.
just give me comedy
Just
Gladiator.
the,
Go Mel Brooks.
There are some moments where the one emperor is like completely insane and talking to his monkey and all that stuff.
Right.
And it was like, man, you could do like 5 more minutes of that. And
I can't tell. I know we're gonna go through films, because we got 3. I can't tell if I was broken down or if I genuinely liked. So there's a moment when
Like it got
I thought I was having fun with it, but I thought, am I just delirious? There's a moment where the psycho brother names his immediate in charge his little monkey,
Right.
and then the next person is Denzel Washington's character, and everyone in the Senate is like, oh, it's happened. We've seen it happen. And I looked at the look on his face and the monkey looking at the camera, and I went, this is great.
Right.
And then I thought, have I passed that point where I can be like enjoying it and
It's
just
like
rooting for the badness to come through?
Yeah, you get to a point where it's like Stockholm syndrome. And it's like,
am I in it?
You've fallen in love with
I
the crazy
legitimately
person.
don't know if that's a great scene or if I was just like so dying for something hilarious. So there's that. It suffers from the thing that you don't want this movie to suffer from, which is boredom. There are action scenes, but they are not exciting for some reason. And you would think that the same guy who directed Russell Crowe in the original film, doing almost the same scenes. Like, I don't mean verbatim, like they're really just like when Gus Van Sant redid Psycho, like frame by frame with Anne Hesh and Vince Vaughn. I don't mean that, but I mean, I would be curious to see when certain gladiatorial fights happen in the first film on a watch and be like, did you time that again? Did you think that 36 minutes and then a fight and then 12 and then a fight? Like, I wonder if it has that same formula. Then it worked. Russell Crowe is commanding. Here, Paul Mescal is not a bad lead. He's actually he's fine,
cool.
and he does good stuff. Everything around him is just sort of like styrofoam coliseum, and he knows it, and he's doing the best he can with Denzel Washington, who's doing fine.
Right.
Like, again, the scenes where he's not sword fighting a guy half his age, and I'm supposed to believe he's holding his own. Like, come on. But
Yeah.
the other scenes, like there are scenes with other Cal people. Pedro Pascal is in this, and he has some scenes, and you're just sort of like, okay, this should be better with all the people in it, with the director and his name. But looking back at his IMDb stuff, man, the last 10 movies of his I loathe. Like I don't even just dislike them. Like they're awful. I don't know where this got greenlit. I don't know where it went wrong. But somewhere at every corner, when it felt like they could have rolled low when they needed to roll high on dice, they went low.
Yeah.
And it just, I don't mean they're, and before we jump off, I don't mean like costumes look flimsy, the swords are rubber. I don't mean that. I just mean this is a group of people that should have been able to do this because they've already done it different ways. And there's no reason why it didn't work, except it doesn't work.
Yeah, it should have been a lot better.
I also gave it a 2.5.
Oh,
I couldn't give it any more than a 3. I didn't think it deserved to go below 2. So sweet spot.
yeah. Yeah, I think should have been a good movie.
It should have been.
And all of the reasons that it's bad are all Ridley Scott and his
I agree.
Psychotic delusions of grandeur.
Yep.
The part at the end where he's making this speech to like the two armies
yeah.
is so
Oh my God.
laughable.
The kumbaya thing
You
he
would
tries.
You would think that they had spliced that in from, like
right.
something that's on History Science Theater. I mean, it's like, it's so, all of a sudden, and he just like stands up and you're like, is this like a commercial? Like, it is so laughably full of itself and thinks that it's interesting. It's like if Ridley Scott decided all of a sudden one day, I'm going to write the actual last chapter of every Shakespeare play and fix them all because they're all crap and not as good as me. I mean, it's so weird when you watch that start to happen. When you get to the part where that's about to happen, you start going, no.
I know you because it's telegraphed.
Not what's about to happen.
I swear it's longer, but it is on par with Rocky at the end of Rocky 4, trying to tell everyone in Russia, like, if I can change, yous can change, we all can change. And then Putin stands up, or, it was Gorbachev then, and starts clapping. And I'm like, just watch. Like, that's some weird, like, these people are ready to shed some serious blood. And he's like, hey, we got more in common than we don't. Come on, y'all.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's so weird. But the last thing I'm going to say, and as you kind of said, like everything else is really fine, right?
It's serviceable. It's fine.
Denzel's good.
He is good.
The acting is mostly, pretty good. Everything looks gorgeous.
Yeah.
There's everything pretty much is doing a fine job. It's just a horrendously stupid story delivered horrendously.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
it is.
And it's very weird. The one thing that I will say before we jump into another movie is Denzel is good, right?
Yeah.
But there are a lot of scenes that Denzel is in. Yeah. And I mean like 70% of the times you see Denzel.
Yeah.
Where it seems to me, right, watching this movie, it's like what happened is he didn't have the script beforehand at all, right? And every day he would read the script and he'd go,
right,
all right, I'll do that. And then he goes and he's like, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
I'm like, he's delivering it not bad,
right,
but like he doesn't believe it and he's surprised at the words coming out of it.
You want to see you want to see the difference, because he just did a couple years ago Macbeth.
Right.
So if you tell him, hey man, you can throw the yoga toga on, we'll get you in the Coliseum again, you'll say some Shakespearean things, I can see him being like, and I get to work with Ridley Scott, I'm in, let's do it. And then he shows up and he sees his lines and he's like, this is not Macbeth.
So my check's already cleared, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it's weird. It's weird to watch. All right. Anyway, don't go see that.
It's actually not worth even throwing on just for like there's nothing there.
It's really not. It's
a Gladiator film.
It would be like a 10 times better film if you watched it without sound.
Yeah.
If you just watched the stuff happen and made your own story.
And you said it because we said it a version. If you put it on and you're like, oh, I got to microwave some popcorn, or you get up and you come back in, or you're like, oh, I need some pizza, or I got to do whatever, the door. What if you keep coming in and out of the movie with small breaks, you're going to think this is a fantastic film because the scenes by themselves aren't bad at all.
Yeah.
But if you sat there and watched this whole thing,
even true.
I
don't know. falls for that either. All right, A Real Pain. Okay, so we got to move here theoretically.
Yeah.
A Real Pain is a very weird movie. Actually, these last two movies, I'll tell you, they are in a way they are in a similar camp for me anyway. And that camp is they are like throwback to like 20 or 30 years ago when movies would win Best Picture and everyone, the normal people,
Right.
like the mass audiences, would never even bother to see them and would go, why is that a good movie? See, people who think these are good movies are like elitist
There Will Be Blood.
asses, right?
Things like There Will Be Blood. People are like, I'm not gonna what? Drink your milkshake? What?
Yeah.
I'm not.
I mean,
cool.
this movie, and this is a movie too that's like really hard to sell with like a trailer. But this is a movie almost going to things like, like Whitman, uh, like Metropolitan
Right.
and
Right.
Last Days of Disco or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like nothing happens in this movie except conversation. And then suddenly we jump to we're in a new place having a new conversation. But like that's all that happens is you've got Jesse Eisenberg, who wrote and directed and produced it, and and Culkin.
Kiernan.
Yeah. And it's like them, and they go on this trip to Poland to go to. It's like this very small guided tour where it's like really guided.
Yeah.
Where you've got like a guy, and there's like 8 people,
Right.
and you go to all these places, and he tells you all about them. And the shtick of this is they're cousins, and Culkin not that long ago tried to kill himself, and he is, in somewhat stereotypical fashion of people who have tried to kill themselves. Because then everybody says he was like the life of the party, and whatever. Like he's everybody likes him. He's like always on, and whatever. And Jesse Eisenberg like always wanted to be like him because he could just walk into a room and just start talking to everybody, and everyone would end up his friend or whatever. And Jesse Eisenberg is like, I have my like boring life, but I mean I love it.
Yeah.
But I just could never be like him. Like always looked up to him growing up. And so how dare he be the person who like tries to kill himself, whatever.
Right.
So they, for whatever reason, they decide to go on this tour where they're going to tour areas of Poland that are like, the concentration camps, the gas houses, and all the whole like World War II like touristy journey, whatever, all of the spots
on the way to go see their grandmother's house where she grew up. It isn't like a tour of the Holocaust. It is en route to getting to this thing, and they thought, well, we might as well do that. Well,
so and then, like I said, apart from the fact that that is happening in the background because we are moving along.
Yeah.
Like nothing happens, and it's just conversations.
Right.
It's them having conversations with each other. It's Culkin's character being obnoxious to people and trying to fit in with this little group. It's like it's a weird thing because he is this guy theoretically that like people like, but then you like jam him with the same 6 other people for an extended time.
Yeah.
And he's grating.
Yeah. That's
and
the word.
he gets on your nerves, and he's obnoxious, and he just says whatever pops into his mind.
Yeah.
And at various points he like gives the guy crap who's providing the tours, and he's like, can you just like shut up for a minute and let us like be here, and, whatever. I mean, it's just that whole thing. So anyway, either way, it's a hard movie to sell to anyone, right? Just like some Robert Altman movies are kind of hard to
I always say
somebody to see, right?
Before Sunrise is hard until you watch it, and then it's the easiest thing in the world to suggest.
But it's like same sort of thing where that's just all conversation.
What's it about?
And
two
it's like,
people talking for 90 minutes, and you're like, no, really, and I'm like, no, really,
right.
it's great.
Yeah, and everybody lines up and goes, take my money.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, right.
So
Yeah.
this is the same sort of thing. And then it's like, now how do you judge it? But anyway, that's what the movie is about. And this is a movie where, I had a little trouble with this one too, because I could only give this movie 7.
Wow, you like this a lot.
And and well, that's cool.
Yeah.
And and mainly because parts where this movie is working, it is really as good as like any of those movies that are, uh,
We're talking about any of them.
that are great,
Yeah.
that have stood the test of time and are these weird things. Um, but man, when it's not working, it's not working. And I think when it's not working, it's because we're not actually having a conversation. And
That's a
it
good point. That's a good way to look at it.
what we've got is just what Jesse Eisenberg wants to say to the audience.
Yeah.
And it's not, there are several points in the movie where all of a sudden it's not what this character would say. It's just what you want the movie to say.
Right.
And it really changes gears and switches what's going on. And for me anyway, it luckily doesn't do that too often.
Yeah.
But man, when it does it, it is kind of jarring.
Yeah.
And they are like doing their thing. And plus, they have this kind of like back and forth love, hate, getting mad at each other, like kind of thing, which sometimes feels pretty genuine, but sometimes feels really, this is what I want them to do right now.
Right.
Again, it's like, it's very, uh, conversations are hard.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
and just because you have two people saying lines at each other doesn't mean it feels like a conversation is actually happening. Like I said, there are plenty of times, especially Jesse Eisenberg's character, where it's just like, man, this is not, I don't know, it just feels so false suddenly.
Yeah.
Next to it's almost like if the rest of it were worse, that would be better. You know what I mean? Because some of it is really good, and then it's like, record scratch.
Yeah.
We're doing this.
Right.
I don't know. So anyway, that's what I give it.
You're hitting the thing that I had thought of a lot too, which is conversational movies like the ones that we talk about often. If you're a longtime listener, we bring up the before sunrise, after sunset type films. Glengarry Glen Ross gets dropped sometimes. Just films where people are talking. There are no fistfights. There are no shootouts. There's no magic powers. There's no supernatural anything. It's just conversation and drama. And when it's done right, it's amazing. Because you have to convey things without, like, if somebody looks at somebody and he's like, you're my brother, I'll do anything for you. Okay, that's just words, blah, blah, blah. But if I see you jump in front of a truck or something, like, I know where you will take it. So the lack of action means that the characters in the story have to do more work, and it's easy to see it happening when you have good story and good acting happening. I like Kieran Culkin very much. I think he's a lot like almost every character he seems to play. Like when I see him in interviews, I'm always thinking of The Rock in some way where Dwayne Johnson says, The Rock is just me. I'm at usually like a 7 and he's at 11. Like it's that. Culkin seems like he's a lot of the same character, but he seems to be, and maybe the guy doing the press junkets is a character.
Right.
But he seems to be like 7 and the characters are 10s or 11s. I like him. I like his performances. I actually, for the most part, like Jesse Eisenberg when he's doing smart work, not comic book work. He sucks in those. But this all falls on Jesse, and because of the writer, director, he's just doing everything here. I think the pitch is fantastic. I think the actual product is bland. I think it's uninteresting and it's boring from so many positions where I'm on the other side of that coin from you, which is fine. We do that sometimes. Instead of so much of it being like really interesting, small things that didn't seem to work here and there, I thought most of it was uninteresting. Small pockets where I was like, that's a good scene. And that's a good scene. I think fundamentally, the story has a big problem. Like, I don't think that you should invite your suicidal cousin to the Holocaust stations. Okay, like
Right.
flat out, the very first time this comes up, and I'm like, what the hell? What? But I'm so important about making my film and telling what I want to tell. I didn't even think of that. Like, you're too friggin' smart to know that that's the stupidest idea on the planet. But we're gonna go with that. So if you accept that this isn't a comedy, not even a dark comedy, that this is a straight drama about two people learning about themselves in a very stereotypical, like, we're gonna go to the Holocaust and we're gonna have these things and these experiences, and I'm gonna break down and I'm gonna realize I've missed these. It's all cliche. It
Yeah.
doesn't work in their hands when it's so confusing because they're so good. It should do nothing but work.
Right.
There are scenes that do work, and they are not fleeting sometimes. Sometimes, like, I've seen people talking about the dinner scene where Jesse Eisenberg, is basically having this really open conversation about not only his cousin, his suicide attempts, his own wants and his needs. And I watched that scene and I went, that's the first take. You got to do that 3 or 4 more times. That didn't work.
Right.
It doesn't work for me on a number of different reasons. Um, for me, and I'm trying to run through it quick because I do want more time to talk about the other things if we have it. One of the things that I always pay attention to, but not out of some weird devotion because I'm not a musician. The music in this film is absolutely F. And now the music by itself is A+ music, but the way it's dropped in, this feels like a senior in high school who had to do a capstone project to get out of their theater project, and they just used iMovie to drop in a track here and a track there. It screams and reeks of pretentious bullshit. It is absolutely ineffective and doesn't do anything except be related to the subject matter of Holocaust, sad, somber classical music. That's, I mean, give me a friggin' break. You are smarter than this film, and you're making the dumbest film. All the while, it feels like, at times, it sounds like I hated the film. Didn't hate the film. Couldn't give it anything above a 4. Barely at 3, but I'll give it a 4 because the scenes that did work were good. But Jesse feels like M. Night talking to me about how great a producer and a movie maker he is in this, when I think what he wanted to do from the beginning, it felt like Zach Braff making Garden State again. I was on board.
Yeah.
I'm dialed in, and I'm like, oh man, yes, this is what I want. I want these guys. I love the characters. They're doing great things. Eisenberg walking to the station gives more character development in 3 phone calls than I would ever have imagined. I stopped everything, turned my phone over. I was watching the film, dialed in. It just crumbles because it can't be what it wants to be because he doesn't trust the characters to be fully developed enough to do what he has them do.
Yeah.
And that for me just fails.
Yeah, I agree about a lot of that. I think the dinner scene was terrible.
Yeah.
But I think really ultimately it comes down to a few different things of why I think it's not as good as it should be,
Right.
even though I don't like it as much as you. The first one is both of these characters have like 2 stages during the movie. One is where they are really kind of caricatures of an idea that we're giving.
Yeah.
And the other one is they're some real characters
Yeah.
who like there's a reason caricatures are what they are, right?
Right.
Because there are
Built
real
on real
characters
features.
who
Yeah.
have that, right?
Yep.
And the movie goes back and forth between which one it's using and who's talking at the moment.
Yep.
And it's really similar to the exact change in whether or not we're having a real conversation or whether we're just throwing out the bullet points we want the movie to say.
Yeah.
And that really ultimately hurts the movie, and it didn't need it. And the second one is Jesse Eisenberg cannot direct either of these people.
Yeah.
And the movie needed somebody who can, because Culkin is just being Culkin.
Yeah.
And that's not a movie that's well directed.
Right.
I mean, and nothing against him because I think he's great.
Yeah.
And almost everything I've ever seen him, I think he's great.
Yeah.
But if he's not moved, sort of,
Right.
then he is just this person.
Yeah.
And that's
Will be him.
and that's not it, right? I mean, and that's not what this movie needed. Yeah. And the the next real problem that I have with it is the movie. It could have been really good,
Yes.
and one of the real problems is the end of this movie should have really just destroyed you.
Put you right in a puddle. Yeah.
And it couldn't do
It
it
just
at
doesn't.
all
Yep.
because it didn't earn it.
Didn't earn it.
Throughout all the stuff that happened was not good enough
Yeah.
to deliver the end. By the time you actually get to the end, you just kind of go, I mean, I see what you're doing.
Yep.
And that's as good as it can be. If this was the movie it should have been,
Yeah.
like this could have been a 10.
Yeah.
And at the end, everyone who ever saw this movie would be talking about the end of this movie for like weeks.
Yeah.
Everyone they ran into on the street because, in Jesse Eisenberg's mind, it does what it's supposed to do.
Right.
But
And-
in the movie, it doesn't.
And to be fair, sometimes you're so close to a project you can't tell. That's why you need people to look at it. That's why
Right,
they do
right.
dailies. You're just like, this is what I'm doing. And they're like, man, I see what you're doing. It's just not hitting it.
Right.
And yeah, he might have suffered from the forest for the trees on that, but I totally agree.
Right. If you just watched the film, didn't watch the movie, and you were forced to build the movie backwards in your mind of
Yeah.
what movie that would have more power than the actual end of the movie after watching this.
Here's proof how things like this work on a level. I just gave a spirited kind of tack on it. If I remove the emotion and I just told you what the movie was, what had happened, like I didn't have to break down everything, but I gave you a review of what the subject of the film was, the plot, I think you'd be like, that sounds fantastic. I want to go see that. That sounds so impactful, especially if I tell you how it starts and how it ends. Like there's a thing there about it, and if it doesn't do that, then what happened is the middle, like the making of it, got in the way. Because I do think it is. I think it's a smart idea. I think on paper as a pitch, it's no wonder this got greenlit. And I don't know how hard it was to get the financing for it, but it certainly doesn't. Again, no special effects, no nothing. It's just you got to buy a plane ticket for 6 people. It's a weird thing when one of the sub characters in the group is more interesting than the group focus. Yeah, is his name Eoji? Like I wanted the film to be about him.
Yeah,
he was
right.
he was fantastic
Like, he
and
needs a
fascinating.
spin-off.
He needs a
Right.
spin-off film. I want to see that. It's too bad. It's too bad because I really did think immediately of Zach Braff and Garden State. And I love that movie. I love it now. I loved it when it came out, and I thought, man, he's saying things in a way that is so skillful that you would never thought the Scrubs guy
Right.
could do.
Right.
And the joke's on everybody, but this is so working on all the pistons.
All right. So now we don't have a lot of time, but we're going to do the Brutalist.
Brutalist.
And this is probably for within the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Anyway, because it's getting nominated for everything.
Yep.
It's going to win plenty of stuff. It already won Golden Globe for Best Actor.
Yep.
And I would say deservedly so. Right. I think he was great in this.
He is great.
Whether or not he
This is a
is
weird
what I
one.
wanted him to be,
Right.
necessarily.
Yeah, he is Laszlo Toth in this.
But this is like the epitome of the movie where, let's just say this wins Best Picture, right? That will just become another like link in the chain of, people who go to movies and love movies who are not film critics or not in the industry or whatever, all like just rolling their eyes at the Academy Awards.
Yeah.
Because it's so, I don't even know exactly the right word. It's so unapproachable, this movie. It's hugely long.
Yeah.
It's not about anything. There is almost no conflict that happens.
Yeah.
It's just like this guy's diary, and you make it a movie.
Yeah.
It's just like, this is just what happened.
Yeah, we're
like,
gonna do chapters of the diary.
There are, I would say, in some technical sense, like bad guys, right?
Yeah, there
But
are.
there's no bad guys. There's he's not up against anything. This is just like this guy's life and what happens. And, if you thought it was a documentary, who could hold it against you? Because it's just this guy.
Right.
And, just to throw this out, it is sort of a documentary, but of an amalgam of a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Is the theory of how this movie
It's
came
very
to be.
unique in that way.
But it's a very weird movie.
Yeah.
And the first thing, if you try to sell this movie to somebody and try to get them to see it, is they're going to ask you why it's called The Brutalist, and you can't tell them.
Right.
Cool.
You could, and the problem is, it sounds like he's a heavy for a mob guy who's
Right, you
roughly
think you're
tuning
watching
people up, and especially the way the beautiful poster. When you see the scene that the poster is from in the film, you're like, oh my god, color, pose, the lighting, it is striking as a poster with a title named The Brutalist. And I want to take everybody
Right,
aside
it
and be like,
seems like
it's not what you
It seems like it's a movie from the 40s.
It
about
does.
the mob or
Yes.
whatever. But anyway, it's about an architect. It's right kind of after the World War II, and he escapes. He makes it to America.
Yep.
He gets separated from his wife and his niece,
Yep.
who end up taking like 5 years
Right.
to finally be able to come join him. And he's an architect, and not only is he an architect, but he's like a famous architect
In Europe,
and and he's done big things.
Yep.
But he comes here, and that doesn't mean anything.
Nobody.
He's got he's got family that he goes to work for and makes furniture. That falls apart.
Yep.
He ends up like working whatever construction he can get.
Yep. Shoveling coal.
Somebody figures out who he is.
Yep.
Now that takes him on a whole new turn.
Yeah.
And then his life becomes a whole different thing, and it's just all these like ups and downs.
Yeah.
And what happens with him and the interactions with people, and the fact that he's a foreigner. It's like theme upon theme upon theme.
Yeah.
Going on in the movie, but it's insanely long.
3 hours and 34
and
minutes.
It is pretty close to also being a movie where it's just conversations happening. There is stuff that happens.
Right.
In much more serious way than in like a real pain, but still, then that happens, and you still go, well, but nothing happened. Right. I mean, it's like there is
no one
nothing going on.
Like
right. And the weird thing about it, just because you got to throw this out, is that it, to me anyway, did not at all feel that long. It definitely feels long, right?
Uh-huh.
But by the time it was, and there's an intermission.
15-minute intermission.
But by the time it was over, I didn't go, oh my God, that was the longest thing I've ever had to sit through or whatever. Like it does kind of keep you in it and keep moving kind of, even though nothing's happening, which is weird.
Yeah.
But I mean, I've seen 2.5-hour movies that felt a lot longer than this.
Yeah.
I mean, it definitely feels maybe how long it is.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like torturous, like sitting there checking my watch every 5 minutes or whatever, going, oh, this is long. I mean, that's just me. For me, it did not feel all that long.
Yeah.
But
the first 2 hours, this sounds really numb because it's a three and a half hour film. First hour and 50 minutes before you, or the first 2 hours, is something like 150 to 2 hours before you hit built-in intermission. It's not like the theater said, okay, break. Like it is built into the film. It literally says intermission and counts 15 minutes. Those first hour and 50 minutes to 2 hours are strangely brisk for a film that doesn't do anything but talk and walk around. I agree with that. I thought the last hour and a half was stretching time.
The closer it gets to the end,
really long.
The closer it gets to the end,
because I think
the more it does
films
kind
here.
of slow down.
Right. But anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to.
But overall, I mean,
it did not feel like a 3.5 hour thing. All
right. So anyway, I haven't even given a rating. Now the weird thing about the movie too is that there is so much in this movie that I think is awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm not surprised if it gets nominated for all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Cinematography, production design, actor, I would say even like supporting actor and actress maybe or whatever. Like there's just all this great stuff happening, and the story is somewhat hard to judge because it feels almost like there's a documentary about a guy's life, and then you go, the story's stupid.
Right. Right.
What? Like, what
Yeah.
does that mean?
Yeah.
Because it's that kind of movie.
Right.
But then I think about, and we were just talking about our ratings, and like there's all this stuff that's good about it. There's lots of stuff I liked about it. There's lots of scenes I thought were amazing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that I take 40 minutes out of this movie and I'd be fine.
Right.
That's just me.
Right.
But then, I think, to what extent is this movie being what it's trying to be?
This goes back to our show.
And
Right.
and my parachute for that is, that something that is legitimate to try to be.
Right.
And this movie is being what it is trying to be in a way that few movies do, I think. I mean, this movie is exactly what it's trying to be. And this is also another one that's like written and directed by the same guy. So everything is on one person's shoulder. I think he produced it too.
I think he did too. Actually, that's a good. I mean, I don't have to look it
up. And at the end of the day, I had some problems with the movie. Had some problems with what it does and what it thinks it's supposed to get out of what it does.
He did produce it,
which I think are kind of garbage. There are things that happen, and I'm not going to spoil stuff, but there are things that happen.
So much to spoil. Jeez.
There are things that happen, the big important things that happen, that you get something out of that happening.
Right.
And then there's those same things and what he wanted to get out of them. And they're totally different things.
Yeah, they don't align.
And I feel like that actually is something I get to take points off. Right?
Yeah.
Because when you just don't know what actually is happening with your art, your story, I get to call that a negative. Anyway, we can't go on about this forever. In the end, just to get it out, I gave this 8.
That's what I wrote you down for. And
I think this is another movie, just like A Real Pain. This movie should have been 10. And I think it could have been.
Yeah.
But I think the 10 version of it is 40 minutes shorter. And has somebody else in the ear of the director on a lot of scenes, because there are some scenes, just for example, there's it's not even exactly a scene, but it's like 5 or 10 minutes where he first builds this weird chair thing.
Yeah.
Where that scene alone is like one of the best movies I've ever seen. Like that like 10 minutes is just awesome.
Right.
And when you can't take that ability to deliver stuff in a movie and have it be in the rest of the movie, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
And somebody else should have been able to have some input on this movie, because no question it would have.
If somebody told me there was a 25-minute documentary of Daniel Day-Lewis cobbling shoes, just go home right now and watch it. I would do nothing else. Like, Adrian Brody making that chair as Laszlo Top would have been fascinating. Like, I agree. Like, there's stuff that he does that is so compellingly interesting to watch. And the film is genuinely, forget that it's filmed in some slightly pretentious VistaVision demand. Like, I'm sorry, this guy, I mean, I don't know what his credits beyond a handful of things are, but I don't really know. It's sort of like Peter Jackson walking off the Frighteners and go, I'm going to need $50 gazillion to film The Lord of the Rings for 10 years. And they're like, Frighteners? All right, go do it. Like, I don't get how this happened. But I see a lot of films like you. I know that films don't look like this from the start. I actually didn't like the beginning of the film with its weird cranking, turning, obsequious angles of pretentious filmmaking, art house.
The first
stuff,
10 minutes,
blah blah blah. It's unnecessary. It's hard. Normally, anybody that listens to the show or watches our reviews knows that the first thing we often come in hard on is the running time. It's easy to say for 3.5 hours, this should easily be an hour off the block. And that's simple. It's too long. It's too long, and it's unnecessarily too long. I think genuinely, and I'm not even trying to be funny about it. I think if I were, I don't think I'm smart enough to like this movie more than I do, and I give it a 4. I think it is below average for a number of reasons, despite the things that I really enjoyed about it. I loved, but it's bogged down by too much and not enough focus when it could have been an absolutely stellar film telling the exact same story without all the fat on the steak. Like, I get some people like a really fatty steak, but you just got to trim it up a bit. It's got to be something that for the length of the running time, it shouldn't feel unfinished, and it did to me. It didn't feel like um it felt like it was rushed to complete itself in a way that wasn't finished. And that's when I got to the end and I'm watching like young Laszlo, middle-aged, successful, rediscovered, going through this entire arc and then the intermission and now what his life is like during the burden of genius and dedication and devotion, cost of everything. And I'm like, that's a fascinating story. It's just not working the way it did before. The entire 90 minutes after the intermission for me might have been stronger if there was no intermission, which is a real weird thing to say. And again, I think 3.5 hours has to be correctly stated. It's 3 hours and 15 minutes because it's an intermission, and that counts as the running time. Um, it's long, but it's not boring. Not always. I think it's designed to showcase things, but not necessarily always be sympathetic. It's doing a lot of really weird things, and it's doing them skillfully. It just isn't doing them effectively for me. And that's sort of like watching somebody who's juggling a chainsaw, a watermelon, and a baseball, and you're like, they've done this enough, I don't have to worry about them cutting their own hand off. But it isn't as fluid as it would be if you just had 3 tennis balls. Like you could be hypnotic in moving these things around. I think I think it's also interesting that the thing that is talked about a lot about this that doesn't really ruin things for me, but I think it's a very fascinating discussion that we don't have time for, is how AI has stepped on the success or the failure of this film in a very big way in a lot of areas, not every area. Um, that's a separate conversation in the end. I guess I would say that because it's so long, because there are so many things here, it was one of the hardest films to really think of critically because it felt very unique. It felt absolutely fresh and refreshing. At the same time, it felt boring and pedestrian. It wasn't doing things, but then suddenly something shifts in the scene I'm watching, and I'm like, it's not doing anything. This is fantastic.
Right.
It is a very confusing film on some level, and I genuinely think I'm not smart enough to like it more. I genuinely think I am not smart enough to like this film more because I like it as much as I can, liking the participants. But I mean, again, I don't. I wrote down one thing because I didn't want to forget it, and I think this is big for me. I don't believe the relationship between Laszlo and his wife, and it's not because of Felicity Jones. I think she's really great in this thing. I just don't believe that um, the people that these characters are supposed to be and as smart and as accomplished in their fields as they are would talk to each other the way that they do that we're seeing. We're seeing her as some sort of, and I mean this literally, like a telepathic witch who has no sexual boundaries. She just wants to grope her husband because she's missed him and loves him, but she knows he's unfaithful. And there's weird scenes between them that people of this education and proficiency they wouldn't have. And I'm confused all day about everything that they do together in the film. It really is really weird when people of this intellect are in a room together and really what they're doing is they're talking like Sims in a room. And I don't mean simulations, I mean like the game. Like you put like you and your wife or your partner and your boyfriend or your girlfriend and you're in a room and they're just going and then they just walk their own ways to go do their own job.
Right.
That stood out to me as a huge drawback. I'm like, this doesn't even need to be in the film. The film would have been better served if in some ways she never made it over. Like everything that happens to him doesn't necessarily need that, except it's what really happened. So we got to put it in. So I'm spinning around and around, but it just didn't work for me in those
Yeah, I
ways.
think that I think there are a lot of parts in the movie, and we're gonna wrap up. I think it's a good movie. I still wouldn't recommend it without like major
Wow.
reservations. I think
So wild.
if you find out everything you can possibly find out about this movie,
Yeah.
and then you think you'll like it, you probably will like it.
You will probably like it.
Uh,
Yeah, for sure.
Other than that, I don't think you'll like it.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone just kind of like getting a tiny little bit of information
Right.
and going, sure, maybe, you won't like it. You need to find out everything you possibly can, and exactly what happens probably. I would say this is a good movie to like just get it spoiled.
Yeah.
I mean, like learn everything about
Do it,
this
Mark.
movie, right? No, I'm not.
I know. In the art house crowd that we saw it in, a big theater with very few seats. Like there wasn't many people in the theater. Two people got up and left about 40 minutes into
Right.
it because they just, and when one of the participants got up and left, happened to be during,
Because there's like a very R-rated.
it happened to be
There are
during
some-
part of the
There are
sex,
some
sex
very
scenes.
R-rated parts.
But when they got up, one person just said, "What is this?" And the other person just went, "Well, it's this, it's just a sexy scene." She goes, "No, the film. What is this?" And they left. And that's the kind of people that don't go see the Star Wars movies. They came to see the
Right.
drama, like an Oscar-nominated drama with Adrian Brody, who's a fantastic actor, and it wasn't for them. Like, I don't know who I would suggest this to either, except you. I might
Yeah.
have been like, "Dude, have you seen
Yeah.
The Brutalist?"
Yeah, I don't know. But okay, so we got to get out of here. And the last thing, just to kind of like wrap up, I think part of the problem, and it kind of hits on his wife coming back and everything. First of all, there are like 2 or 3 movies trying to happen in the same movie, and that is more difficult than I think the movie can manage very well.
Yeah.
But also, I think as far as him and his wife, and then the relationship that spins into, because he's got like this patron that he's sort of beholden to in the whole thing.
Yeah.
I think the movie has a fair amount of parts where it just abandons its effort to you just put it together for yourself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
understand their relationship and the fact that they've been apart for like 6 years by the time she gets there,
Yeah.
and who he was then and who she married and who he is now and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And we're not really gonna kind of mention any of that or really have them
Delve into
talk
it.
about it.
Yeah.
I just demand that you kind of sit there and do a lot of work for a while and come up with a way that this would make more sense. And when you got a 3.5 hour movie, like if you watch a 3.5 hour movie, well, then I demand that you do the whole movie
Yeah.
at me.
And that's sort of what I meant when
if
I
you make a 90-minute movie and you like kind of fast forward some things,
I'll patch the holes.
and you
Yeah.
go, look,
Right.
this
I'll pick
is
it up.
this and
Right.
that is that. But I don't know. It's very rough in some places, but when it's good, it's really good.
When it's good, it's really good, and there aren't like big swaths of time. Like I still think the first hour and 45 minutes of that film, barring the first 10 minutes of the film, it's solid.
Yeah.
There's nothing that happens, but there doesn't have to be anything that happens. All the difficulties that he's encountering and trying to surpass are from the haunting of everything that the world has just gone through. And I think he carries that. I think he shows that.
Yeah.
And I think the people around him show it. And I think that it's a fascinating way to tell this story. Man, it just didn't.
Yeah, and I will say this: we got to run, but it's not for me anyway,
Yeah.
and it could be different for you, but it's not for when it goes wrong. I don't think it's because the person and or people making this film have like Ridley Scott delusions of grandeur,
Right.
think they're geniuses.
Right.
They just can't like pull it off. It doesn't like kind of talk down to you. It's not because it thinks it's the next greatest thing that ever happened. It just doesn't work. And so as like a difference between this and like anything Ridley Scott's ever going to make again,
Right.
I would I would rather see somebody try and make this movie
Yeah,
fail
absolutely.
than try to make some
Remake something.
half-ass
Yeah.
garbage and do it great,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it's
All the talk of old world stuff, pre current World War II ideology, benefactors. In a weird way, sort of feels like Charles Dickens had written The Great Gatsby, in a weird way with all the strange things that are going on. But that's not even a good way to sell it to anybody. Since you said that, I'm like, I don't even know how I would put this in anybody's hands except to say, I never. This is another thing. We used to do this often. We're getting out of here anyway, but I didn't even see the trailer for this. I didn't even. I don't
I
even
saw a
know.
couple, but the trailers are rough for this because they don't explain it.
Because like
They
you
don't
can see the
tell you.
trailer, you think you're gonna like it. I guess every architectural person,
You
our
would never
neighbor,
know.
our neighbor's an architect. I could say, hey man, you want to see something on brutalism?
Right.
Here you go. But geez, I don't know who to give this to.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right. Thanks for tuning in. And
we did a lot.
that was really long. But please like, share,
Yeah.
subscribe, and otherwise trick your friends into listening to us. And we will see you next week.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bye.